I'd like to introduce Philip. He has, I've had sessions with Philip before. We've been to his home for some astrological readings, and it's amazing. His intuitive self matches his astrology knowledge. It's a nice, beautiful combination. He has a PhD in English, taught at UNC Chapel Hill. So he's a great dispenser of this information, so very articulate. So we appreciate that here. So I'd like to welcome Philip Young to give us the talk.
Thank you, Susan. How is everyone doing this evening? Doing good? Excellent, excellent. My name is Philip Young, and as Susan said, I have a PhD in English. I taught for almost 15 years at the university level. I got my doctorate from UNC Greensboro a lifetime ago. I have been doing the work that I do now as a spiritual advisor since 2013. I started my business then, and I mainly do work with astrology and tarot. Tonight's presentation is going to be broken down into two different segments. The first segment is we're going to take a look at the U.S. chart and what's going on in the United States with regard to transits in this upcoming year. And then I'm also going to take a look at the transits for the world, which was going to be cast at Greenwich, New England, for January the 1st at 12:01 a.m. After I do that, we'll have a chance to ask some questions about what I'm going to talk to you about. And then I will take a break with you and then come back, and I will be looking at individual charts and showing you how astrology works for the individuals who submitted their charts to me. I ended up with about 12 people that submitted charts. So it's always fun to actually put the rubber to the road. So the idea is to be able to demonstrate to you how astrology actually works using some charts of the people in the audience. And the good thing about that is they'll be able to give immediate feedback about whether or not I'm on point or if I'm not getting it correct. And what I want to be able to do is show you a number of different techniques doing that process. So before we get completely started and get the PowerPoint up so you can see what I'm going to be talking about, how many people have never had their astrology chart done? Never had your chart done? Okay. How many people have had their chart done like online through an online service or something like that? And how many people have actually had a professional do their astrology chart? Wonderful. That's great to see. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and get the PowerPoint up if you would for me, Kim, and we'll start the presentation about what's going on in the world. So what I always like to try to explain to people about astrology is I want them to understand what you're looking at when you actually look at an astrology chart. And I'm going to show you the chart of the United States here in just a moment. The chart is a two-dimensional representation of the layout of the solar system when you took your first breath. And there are 5 keys to astrology. 4 of those keys are data points, factual information. Whenever someone says to me, hey, I'd love to learn astrology, I always tell them, well, you're going to have to memorize quite a bit of information from the get-go. You're just going to have to know it cold. One of them is the astronomical and calculated points. Now, I have a particular pet peeve. I don't like using the word planets to describe something that's not a planet. So, the astronomical points would be the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus. Calculated points would be things like the North Node. The nodes of the Moon are when a certain crossing of the Moon at a time identifies the North and the South Node. The angles of the chart, known as the ascendant and descendant, those are calculated points that we use in astrology. Then you have the signs of the zodiac. So those calculated points represent different aspects of human personality. Your sun sign, for example, is your life path. Your moon sign is how you give and receive love. So a lot of people will ask me, or they'll come up to me and they'll say, I'm a Taurus and I've heard I should never date a Leo, right? Well, that's fine if you're talking about working together and you're looking at your sun signs, but if you're talking about being in private space and getting naked with someone, you really want to know what your moon is and you want to know what their moon is, because that's how you're going to give and receive love. So sun sign astrology is like the tip of the iceberg that sunk the Titanic. If you really want to know what's going on astrologically, you do need to get your chart cast. The signs of the zodiac, of course, give us the energy and influence. You have, of course, the 12 signs. They're representative of a type of influence that's going to apply to the placement of your points. And then you have the houses of the zodiac, which are the 12 segments the chart is broken down into. Each house represents a different area of your life. And then you have the aspects between points, which create an energy flow and make a circuit board, actually. And the last thing, the spirit key, is free will. So, easiest way to explain this is, if you had a twin, brother or sister, you would have the same chart, but you do not have the same driver. So, the chart for the United States is cast for July 4th, 1776 at 5:10 p.m. in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is known as the Sibley chart. Ebenezer Sibley was the one that cast it. It is the most agreed upon casting of the chart. The sun for the United States is in Cancer in the 8th house, and the moon is in Virgo in the 10th house, and the ascendant for the U.S. is Sagittarius. This is the United States chart. So what you're looking at here when you see the chart is, of course, the layout. Now, for those of you who've had a chart done, how many of you know what a Placidus house system is? Know what Placidus house system is? Okay, so this is what was interesting is a lot of people raised their hands that had a chart done, but when it comes down to the details of course, you're wanting the professional astrologer to provide that. One of the things that is a big word to drop on astrology is science. I hate that. I wish they wouldn't do it. It causes all kinds of grief. The better word to drop on astrology is art or language. Language is even better. So there are multiple house systems that can be used for casting a chart. The house system that I'm using is called the whole sign system, which is different than the Placidus system. So if you had your chart done, most likely you had it done using the sign or the system of Placidus, which that little AS that's up there, there's an AS and a DS that you can see up there, that's the horizon line. In the Placidus system, that would be the cusp of the first house. It would actually sit on that line that's right next to that arrow, which is Sagittarius. But in the whole sign system, those angles become points within the houses. And what's interesting about that is instead of the Memsi that's at the top being connected to the 10th house, it's within potentially the 9th, 10th, or the 11th house. And what you'll see is the U.S. MC, its sort of prosperity by the way it works itself, is actually in the 10th house in Libra. And so for a way to sort of prosper, it's actually through the law. Now, I've been recently writing quite a bit about the United States chart for a website called AskAstrology.com. And one of the things that's interesting about understanding the chart is getting a sense of what the United States really feels like from its astrology. So, Sagittarius on the first house, I like to refer to that as the missionary setting. And if you think about the U.S. spreading out around the world, that's very much in a Sagittarian mindset. Also, it is an authoritarian energy as well. Now, there's something interesting about when we do astrology, there is a ton of techniques, and I'm going to show you some of the specific techniques when we actually look at the individual charts. But one of the techniques is to identify something that's known as the chart ruler. And the chart ruler is determined by the planet that rules the sign of the ascendant. Now, the sign of the ascendant in here is Sagittarius, so the chart ruler for the United States is Jupiter, which is all about expansion, belief, authority, once again, and it sits in Gemini on the opposite side of the ascendant. So there is a lot of bombast that can come out of this country. And if you ask people who are not from this country about one of the things that they can quickly identify about Americans is how incredibly loud we happen to be, right? So one of the things then that's important in trying to understand is, first of all, what's the main concept of the design of the country? The country has its own sort of identity that this birth chart is trying to represent. Sun in Cancer is a sign combination that I like to refer to as the superhero concept. People with Sun in Cancer, they want to be heroic. They want to help save people. What you know is that the creation of the superhero is a purely American phenomenon. There is no other country in the world that has superheroes the way we have superheroes. That is a uniquely American creation. Now, it's true that Japan has comics called manga, but you do not have the same concept that we have that has broken out into the worldwide box office. How many people have seen The Avengers? Anybody? How about Black Panther? Right? So now people are becoming sort of in touch with this American concept, which is part of the sun sign. The moon for the United States is Virgo. Virgo is about service. One of the things that's really important from a soul perspective of this country is to be able to fix things, to problem solve, to innovate. So when we think about a lot of the history of this country, it is innovation, new technologies, and that is something that comes in the soul of this particular country.